Alabama's Indigenous American history can be traced back through four evolving periods, beginning about 10,000 years ago. It peaked with the Mississippian people and ended with modern tribes such as the Cherokee and Chickasaw. Artifacts from the Paleo-Indian, Archaic, Woodland, and Mississippian periods have been found in Huntsville and Madison County. Paleo-Indian people were considered the first people to arrive in North America. It is theorized that they traveled across the Bering Land Bridge that connected present-day Alaska and Siberia. Alabama's climate would have been similar to that of modern-day southern Canada. During the Paleo-Indian period, giant mammals roamed North America. Archaeologists think that this megafauna was an important food source for Paleo-Indian era humans. Types of megafauna included the mastodon, giant bison, mammoth, and giant ground sloth. Some other average-sized species of this time still exist today, such as white-tailed deer and rabbits. The only artifacts that remain are stone tools and projectile points used for hunting. We know Paleo-Indian people lived in Alabama because the few artifacts left behind have been found here, with a high concentration having been found in North Alabama. By the beginning of the Archaic period, the climate in Alabama had warmed so that it was closer to the climate of Alabama today. People living during this period were hunter-gatherers. They lived in small communities, in temporary houses, and moved throughout the year to be near the most abundant food sources. Skeletons of the Archaic people show that they were accustomed to hard work and had a lifespan of about 40 years. The Archaic period saw some innovations to tools, as well as using and fashioning stones for ornamentation. As the period progressed, so did the sophistication of the surviving tools. Evidence suggests people of the late Archaic period had begun experimenting with horticulture, growing seed-bearing plants such as squash and sunflowers. People of the Woodland period practiced horticulture, used the bow and arrow, made pottery, and had complex burial ceremonies. Their population increased, and as a result, their societies became more complex. During this period, people began the practice of mound building that became more widespread during the Mississippian period. Early woodland peoples typically built mounds as part of their burial rituals, whereas towards the middle of the woodland period, people began to build structures on top of the mounds. The Mississippian way of life was prevalent among indigenous people in the area that would become Alabama, starting around AD 1100. Mississippian peoples lived in fortified towns or small homesteads, grew corn, built large earthen mounds, maintained trade networks, had powerful leaders, and shared similar symbols and rituals. Mississippian communities began to decline when Spanish conquistador Hernando de Soto and his army arrived in America in 1540. Europeans exposed the natives to new diseases for which they had no defense. The Mississippian people farmed corn, beans, squash, and sunflowers. The tools they used were shells and stone hoes. They used slash-and-burn agricultural methods to clear forest land. They supplemented crops with nuts and wild fruits, as well as hunted game such as fish, deer, and turtles. Archaeologists believe that the ability to grow corn, and thus have a storable food supply, was integral to the Mississippian people's way of life. Because of better nutrition, the population increased and the communities became more complex. Earthenware pottery found at Mississippian archaeological sites was typically plain and likely used to hold food or liquid. Some exceptions were decorated with stamped designs or painted. Some serving vessels from the period had features that mimicked the head and tails of animals. These pieces would have been owned by prominent citizens. Mississippian communities would often have burial mounds ranging in height, but rarely higher than 10 feet off the ground. Terrace mounds with steps were also used to elevate the homes of important community leaders. Moundville, Alabama, is home to the Moundville Archaeological Park. From AD 1000 to AD 1450, this site supported a large community of Mississippian people. It has over 20 mounds arranged around a central plaza and is the largest site of its kind in Alabama.